So as we just did on the last clip, we're going to talk again about the arsons that are ongoing in this country. Whoa, Simone has a lot to say about the arson. I don't know if you can hear my cat right now, but she's meowing quite loudly. But there were some church fires that are occurring, and as I said before, they're likely in response to the ongoing genocide in this country, but in particular, the findings of indigenous children in unmarked graves at residential schools across this country. And again, the last operating residential school closed in 1996. So just to put it in context, say hi to Simone. Maybe I should hear. Look, I'm going to expose you to some Tucker. So at the very least, I can expose you to my cat. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Look, wait, don't look for your look at the world. Tell the world you love them. Tell the world. All right, are you done? Done? I'll give you some pets. But then I got to do my show, okay? All right. I love you. All right, that was Simone. Simone. She is a pretty kitty. And definitely prettier than whatever the fuck this is. Simone emote when. Well, we'll think about it. First, I gotta get her in the good light, and we'll go for it. But yes, this is a really short clip. So I feel like he had Ezra on as just like a get him in, get him out. We got a lot to talk about. So And I will say this is not the only time Ezra has been on Tucker Carlson's show. So the last time he was on Tucker Carlson was when he claimed that he had leaked documents showing that the Canadian military was supposedly training the Chinese military and giving them our secrets of winter warfare in order for China to fight India over the Himalayas. And as I said then, like, that story is so ridiculous because, for one, Petawawa is next to Ottawa. I mean, it's cold, but I mean, it's not Himalaya cold. And if you wanted to learn how to fight over the Himalayas, China has that already. They don't need to come here to learn our secrets to go fight the thing that they're fighting over there. After all, like, what fucking war has Canada fought in such that we were fighting in, like, winter territory? Like, I don't know. So stupid. Anyways, he's on Tucker. They're going to talk about the arsons. So let's see how it goes.
Now, we'd love to go inside Canada tonight, but we can't get there. It's like 1985 Albania.
It's like 1985 Albania to be in Canada right now. Just right off the get-go. What? I think what he's referring to is the fact that we have our borders closed. But, like, newsflash, we have our borders closed because in America, your country got ravaged by COVID and we didn't want it to spread up here, so we were pretty tight. And yet, somehow it didn't stop people like Kean Bexty from traveling to America, or that nurse from London who went to the January 6th riots. Like, somehow people were still able to go through this border that apparently is so, like, sealed tight. We're like Albania in 1985. We could have so many bunkers and also all be Muslim. Yeah, we could, but we're not. And Tucker is wrong.
Now, we'd love to go inside Canada tonight, but we can't get there. It's like 1985 Albania. It's a closed country. So instead, we're speaking by satellite tonight to Ezra Levant with Rebel Media within Canada. He joins us now. Ezra, thanks so much for doing the show. What is going on in Canada? Serious. I mean, it's hard to believe what's happening in Canada. What is this?
I mean, it's hard. I find it hard to believe as being someone who's in the country that he's talking about right now. I have no clue what he's talking about. I find it very, very hard to believe, Very hard. Secret police! Come help me! Oh my God.
Well, I'm reluctant to use the word Kristallnacht because we're not there yet.
Imagine your opening gambit in an interview with someone is, I'm not gonna compare it to Kristallnacht because we're not there yet. Now he does this thing all the fucking time, which is to compare something to the Holocaust by saying he's not gonna compare it. But like, you are comparing it. You're saying this is like Kristallnacht. I'm not gonna say it's like Kristallnacht yet, but I'm kind of implying that like we're at least on the path to Kristallnacht, or this is like a Kristallnacht and a half. Like, it's not quite like a full Kristallnacht, you know? And like, for those who don't know, Kristallnacht occurred when there was tensions in Germany during the lead up to the World Wars, where Germans who were anti-Semitic, the Nazis were in power, destroyed a bunch of Jewish-owned businesses downtown, just destroyed shop fronts, caused a bunch of chaos. Now, the ironic thing is the Nazi Party itself did not necessarily support what happened on Kristallnacht, but then used Kristallnacht as the justification to institute their laws where they made Jewish people wear the Star of David and stuff like this. And the idea was to kind of be like, look, the people are starting to take things into their own hand and destroy the Jewish businesses. And the Nazis were like, well, we also want to destroy the businesses, but we're going to lose public support if we're that aggressive. And so they instituted smaller measures to, I guess, like pacify some of the more aggressive people in the public, and also to ameliorate others who were nervous about the more aggressive people in public. Now, I guess the comparison that Ezra is trying to make is that somehow the burning of these churches, okay, that somehow the burning of these churches is like Kristallnacht. I don't know how. I mean, in the way I described what happened, so you have possibly indigenous people responding to an ongoing genocide by taking it out on the Catholic Church that was partly responsible for that genocide, and the current pope of that religion that helped with that genocide is refusing to take responsibility for what occurred. And yet somehow that is like the German public destroying shop fronts of Jewish people because of irrational anti-Semitism and this belief that somehow Jews were conspiring to destroy Germany. Somehow these two are exactly the same. This is the same person who would get mad at anyone else who made similar analogies to the Holocaust. He'd be like, how dare you analogize to the Holocaust? I think he was like that when it came to the pro-Palestine shit. We love Tucker? Yeah. Well, our worlds combined. Ezra went on Tucker. He's never wrong. That's exactly the same as eradicationist anti-Semitism, right? I don't know what eradicationist anti-Semitism. Yeah, they're totally the same. I will say too, I mean, people died in Kristallnacht. Well, who's dying? Like, no one's died. No one's died. It's so frustrating. But let's hear more from this never wrong Tucker Carlson.
That was the night of the broken glass in pre-Holocaust Germany, where they smashed and burned and killed Jewish synagogues. It was a precursor to the Holocaust. Obviously, we are not that far gone yet. But what do you call it when literally dozens of churches are being systematically vandalized, torched? There was one fire in the BC interior that wiped out a whole village of 250 people, 2 people dead, and it is not yet determined who caused it, but it was in an area where other churches have been torched. So it may actually have its first victims. The crazy thing...
He made this conspiracy theory like immediately after it happened, which was the idea that the forest fire that then took out Lytton, BC was the cause of one of these churches burning. There's absolutely no evidence that that's the case, but that is what he's trying to suggest. And I had my own reservations when these churches were burning in the first place, because part of me is like, I fully sympathize with indigenous people who might want to carry out actions like this, considering the reality we live in. But like, also, yeah, global warming is a concern. We have droughts, like forest fires are being created. There is at least a level of concern there. But there is absolutely no evidence of what happened to the town of Lytton, where the entire town caught fire, was the result of this. Not only that, but in the town of Lytton, the authorities, when they sent the evacuation notice, initially sent it just to the white residents of the town and ignored the indigenous population and didn't tell them till like moments later. They got like a delayed message that the town was under threat from a fire, which is, again, the system that we live in Canada is a type of slow but very real genocide that is happening here, And what I mean by slow is it's not the kind of like immediate genocide that everyone likes to refer to, where we're in the actual Holocaust and they're rounding people on train cars and taking them away, He's suggesting we're winding up to a Catholic Holocaust. Yeah, I mean, like, are we? I mean, for one, people, like, I mean, just think about this. We have a Catholic public school system in our country. There's Catholic schools all over this province that still function. No one's being threatened. What we're talking about is a few Catholic churches on or near reservations, which, again, the reservation system, Indian Act, like, these are all parts of our country that are aspects of our ongoing genocide against indigenous people. This, like, if anything, the best analogy would be like, this is the Jews fighting back, and he's going, the Jews fighting back is equivalent to a Nazi Holocaust. Like, it's so fucking backwards and makes absolutely no sense, Don't threaten me with a good time. I'm kidding. Parody Minecraft. I don't sport.
This is so explicitly an anti-church hate crime wave, and yet Justin Trudeau, who is normally the first...
Notice, like, anti-church. It's an anti-church hate crime wave. Like, churches are not people. They're fucking buildings. Like, holy shit. Hate crimes against a church. It would be one thing if the hate crimes were targeting people. I'm sure these indigenous people aren't going, living today Catholics are the problem, and we're targeting them with, like, violence. That's not happening at all. They're targeting symbols of the people who carried out a genocide, helped to carry out that genocide, It's so fucked up.
And the wokest waited a week before saying anything, and he literally said,
the wokest,
that's not the way to go. That was as tough as he got. He introduced an anti-hate crimes bill in Parliament that's targeting mean tweets and Facebook posts. But
no, it's not. I mean, Bill C-36, as it's coming out, does not target mean tweets. It specifically targets hate speech and online messages that promote hatred. And hatred, as defined by the criminal code, involves things like denying the Holocaust or promoting genocide. That's what the bill... Like, I could be like, Ezra is a stinky poo-poo head, and that would not be covered by the bill, even though that might be a mean thing to say. Ezra has a hard time at understanding words and how words work. But there you go.
But literally, you have church after church being torched by Antifa-style terrorists, and he's almost silent on the matter, and his right-hand man finds it understandable.
Almost Antifa-style terrorist. What the hell does that mean? Like, like what does it mean? If like, here's the ironic thing. There's a nugget in here that's true, which is like, yeah, the Catholic Church is a tad bit fascy. There's elements of fasciness. They supported fascism, like they participated in this genocide. So yeah, people who would target the churches in response to their genocidal behavior might reasonably be anti-fascist in that sense. But I don't think that some of these arsons that are taking place are necessarily some sort of like, it's not thought out of that like level of analysis. They're probably just pissed off, reasonably so. I love Tucker's dopey, angry, concerned, confused face. It's good to know Ezra cares so much about aggressive acts against religious buildings. Can't wait to check his extensive backlog of decrying intimidation attacks at mosques. Yeah, here's the thing is, he denied that the attacks in London were carried out as an act to target Muslim people. So here you have an incident in which a faith was targeted for that faith, and those people were killed, and he wants to downplay it. Since then, other women across the country have been targeted for being Muslim, for wearing visibly clothing that would many people associate with being a Muslim. They've been targeted. This has been happening all across our country, even since the attack in London. Mosques have been vandalized. Not a peep. You don't hear a goddamn fucking word from Ezra's mouth. But some Catholic churches are being burnt, in particular because a reaction to the actual fucked up shit the Catholic Church did. And Ezra is up in arms about this, as if it's the equivalent of a genocide. You like, just think of how am I supposed to respond to this other than to say that clearly Ezra has picked a side in this fight?
I think these are dark days for religious freedom in Canada.
Yeah, when they're burning churches and the head of the BC Civil Rights Commission says burn it all down? I mean, that person sounds like a dangerous lunatic. Who is that? What is going on?
And she hasn't been sacked. That was over a week ago that she said it. In fact, various...
I haven't heard about this in particular, but I'm like, yeah, burn it all down, fine. Like, what? Tell me what the problem is. If they're if they're doing something terrible, like, I imagine there would be circumstances where these two assholes will say something like burn it all down, but it'll usually be something like we need to burn down the border to prevent immigrants from coming in. Whatever bullshit they're going to say. But I don't know. Sometimes you need to fight injustice, And there was an injustice carried out here.
Board members of her Civil Liberties Association have supported her. By the way, these churches often have Aboriginal, Indigenous congregants, and they're saying, don't burn our churches down. It's the Canadian equivalent of when Black Lives Matter burns down Black-owned businesses in Black neighborhoods. That does not help Black people. In Canada, most of these churches are Aboriginal focused, and you often have, in one case, white Antifa-style vandals filming themselves.
So, I don't know about this last incident that he's talking about, but this line of attack is always super frustrating to me, which is that, like, no culture is a monolith. Like, of course you're going to get people like Candace Owens, in any community. And so that's not to say that, like, of course. I mean, there's even Indigenous activists locally that are not happy with the burning of these churches, either for their own personal religious beliefs or they don't think it's a good tactic. And that's, room for debate. Like, that's how these things evolve and communicate. But there's also, like, just, what is it, the Martin Luther King line that this is like the voice of the unheard? Like, that's another thing that we're dealing with here. Like, I doubt there's any, like, organized movement behind this. You're having people who are dealing with their trauma and acting on that trauma. And there's a level of, I don't know if it's like cheering on, but it's more of just like understanding where it's coming from rather than condemning it outright, which I think is like the way to approach this. Like, I can't relate to their experience. And if this is how they're dealing with it, that's how they're dealing with it. And the better response to that is finding ways to seek restorative justice in some capacity, to have the Catholic Church in some capacity apologize, to show some semblance of responsibility for what they did. Instead, we get this bullshit, you know? And so it's like, yes, it's going to be a tricky issue with even internal to that community. But Ezra always does this. It's, again, the identity politics shtick that we always bring up. Whenever there's any story about pipelines, so for example, the Wet'suwet'en blockade that was happening, he'll come in and say that here's a bunch of indigenous people who are working for the pipeline company, and they love the pipeline, so therefore, how dare these indigenous people speak for these indigenous people? And it's all in the game to discredit any activist movement for a just cause, you know? It's a way to use identity politics against what they perceive as identity politics. But at the same point, it's like, no, there's a reason why I choose to side with the Wet'suwet'en people, which is that global warming is a real thing. The fact that they have claims to that land is a real thing and an important thing. And just because a few indigenous people don't agree with them, that doesn't mean that those things, two things that I just brought up, aren't still important things to care about, you know?
Desecrating a church. And the trouble is, from the very top, it's either silence or tacit support.
Yeah, and I'm ashamed to say that American Christian leaders mostly have been silent about it too, and I wish they wouldn't be. Ezra, I appreciate that report from Canada. I hope sometime to be able to visit Canada once the borders open, but in the meantime, thank you.
Thank you.
Now
Thank you. Oh, thank you. So glad that Ezra went on this show to have this conversation. I just love like the pretense here too, which is like, who is Ezra to talk about these issues? Who is Ezra to talk about these fucking issues, you know? It's like Ezra is just Tucker's go-to Canadian. I mean, like, the other weird thing is he has Mark Stein on his fucking show all the time, who's another Canadian bigot. Like, he could have just chose Mark Stein to cover this story. But I guess he needed a new talking head and went for Ezra. We don't want him here? Who, Ezra? Yeah, we don't want Ezra here. I'm getting the vibe they don't like each other, but are happy to use each other for the... I don't know. I could see them getting along. I mean, I do wonder... It's weird how, like, in Canada, Ezra is persona non grata for what he did, or the fact that his employee, Faith Goldie, went to Charlottesville and then not only participated in Charlottesville, but then went on a neo-Nazi podcast and made fun of the fact that Ezra is Jewish. She did all of that, and that's why mainstream media in this country have basically disowned him, and all the political parties here have disowned him. But then Tucker Carlson just ignores all of that and is just like, fuck it, come on my show. Come on my show. Because, you know, this guy hired staff writers who were out neo-Nazis on his fucking show. What a wonderful world we live in.
Hello, my rebels. Hello, my rebels. I'm a good boy. I'm a weirdo.